Alright guys, so we're picking up with Russia. Um, how you can think of Russia in this time period, and I think I typed it up here, is Russia is Europe 100 years ago. So where Europe was 100 years ago, that's where Russia really is now. We've talked about why they feel like they need to modernize, but they have still not done so. So page 13, Russia, about a quarter of the way down the page there. So we're going to take a backtrack, but we're in the same time period we left off in Europe. So just we're backtracking through progressiveness, I guess you could say. There's no industrialization. There's obsolete agricultural economy. So we have most of the Russians are involved in agriculture, but it's an obsolete agriculture. Like they're still using the open field system from the Middle Ages that we saw leave Europe a long time ago. There were no revolutions in 1848, which just signifies that we have a very small, if any, really groups of liberals. They haven't had any of those transitions we saw in Europe, and nationalism is going to be a little bit different in Russia because we have all those different ethnicities and nationalities and languages all mushed into one area. So that's kind of our differences right here. Where we left off with Russia was the Crimean War. We exited from class listening to some Iron Maiden talking about the Light Brigade. So the Crimean War was a big humiliation for Russia. The fact that they got beat was a turning point. Remember AP Euro, white guys like turning points, so you might want to circle. I've underlined for you that the Crimean War marked a turning point in Russian history by fostering modernization. They're going to be like, whoa, we need to stop, we need to slow down, we need to catch up. So like slow down in the sense of like we need to quit attacking people and focus on how we can be successful later at attacking people. Russia had lacked a sizable middle class. For middle class, you can just really write liberals right there. They lack those people that are going to be like, let's build a barricade. They lack what kept progress going in other nations. So this didn't spur them economically, politically, or socially. You can just circle A there. This was the key difference for why Russia lagged behind Western and Central Europe. Is what has caused all the problems. When someone sneezes in France, which group is it? What group starts all the crap in France? The middle class, yeah. So when you're lacking a middle class like you are in Russia, you lack those people who have the means, the time, the will, the desire to rise up. And so that's left Russia a little stagnant. Russia realized with the Crimean War loss that it had to modernize or it would remain vulnerable, militarily and economically. So they're wanting to jump in our arena. This is going to be a big deal as we move towards World War I. So, let's come back to Tsar Alexander II, which is where we left off in Russia. He is going to rule from 1855 to 1881, and he is, I've typed the greatest there. I must have been really generous that day. Will you cross out greatest and just put most liberal? Like, I don't think he's the greatest czar. I was, I guess, reaching for an adjective there. He is the most liberal czar, which I guess if you're into liberalism, or liberals, like, that might make him great. I'm not advocating that the most liberal people are the best people, okay? Since Catherine the Great. He believes serfdom was the reason that Russia was held back. He is going to blame it all on the use of serfdom. Remember, we got rid of the use of serfs and peasants along, like the Middle Ages in Europe. He's saying it's because we held on to this in Russia that we are so behind Europe. And so he's really going to focus on this. If this is a system that holds us back, you can just put like a little line by A, B, C, and D. This is just a description of what serfdom was like in Russia. We've covered serfdom. I just like to recap so you don't have to flip back to like 6 units ago and find those qualifications of serfdom. So the problem here, what you might want to write down, is how do you get rid of serfdom? We know from our own experience just with slavery in the United States, it's just like, oh, glory day, let's just release the slaves. Things don't happen that easy. Serfs were pretty much like slaves. They were indentured to the land. What do you do with them? They have had no income. They are indentured to the land and they're owned by someone. You don't just say, run free, like you're going to be fine. Take the clothes on your back and maybe the children that are still with you. Also, with the owners, what do you do? If serfs were considered property, do you have to pay said owners to release said serfs? And so this is the problem that Alexander comes up to. What do you do for the owners and the serfs? And so we're going to get the Emancipation Act. of 1861, so very similar timeline to the U.S. Civil War. You're thinking about the lives, and yes, we did pay for our slaves being released with 600,000 lives, just maybe not monetarily. But Alexander believed that ending serfdom was a key to Russia's modernization, and so he's going to abolish it. But he does have a plan in place with what to do with these people. This means the peasants were no longer dependent on the lord. They were free, although right next to free here, that their life didn't change that much. Alexander realizes he can release the serfs, but he can't change everything overnight. There's too many peasants. There were too many people owning peasants. And so we're going to see that Alexander is going to have to kind of be creative here, and that life won't change as much as you will. And this is where we get the mirror system. So if you want to circle number 4 right here, most Russians then will be forced onto what are like little communes. They will be given land, so they're kind of given things by the government, but it's the czar and the nobles who would own the serfs that decide what land. So you think they're going to be like, here, have my very best land next to this river with all of this pretty soil. No, they're going to give them the worst land, and so the peasants really couldn't, or the serfs couldn't survive on the land that they were given. They're going to have to consolidate lands into what are called mirs. It's communal living, and they're going to have to pay for this land that they were given. So they all live together, and they pay like the loan together. Okay, so it's like this is, you can see the development of a community here. They live on it. It's collective ownership. You're still kind of stuck to the land, because if Matt and I share, like say we're on communal farmland, we're sharing some land, and he just decides like, I would really like to try that United States thing out, but we both owe money on this land together. Do you think I'm going to let him get very far? Yeah, probably Matt would see a whole new side of me, and I would just be like, look, wait a second, like, members of your family start to go missing, you're not leaving me here with this loan, okay? So we see that you still are really tied to the land. Not a lot has changed for our serfs here. This is also where we get Zemstvos. So Alexander realizes he's, an air quote, he has freed the serfs, but he really hasn't done anything so liberal, and he's our most liberal czar. And so he's also going to give us Zemstvos, which are trying to make the little groups of liberals that are there happy so they don't rise up against him. He's a little fearful of what's going on in Europe. He knows if he modernizes, he's subject to all of those things. So he establishes these in 1864. You will need to know both of these words. You need to know what they mean, what they meant for Russia at this time. They were assemblies that administrated local areas. So they're like little local legislatures. It made people feel like they could participate in government. And it will, ease some of the tension here. It was a significant step towards popular participation. Bless you. Yet lords still controlled the Zemstvos. And so we're going to see that people are going to be like, what about a national legislature? And you might want to write the word Duma down here, D-U-M-A. We will see that by the end of this lecture. There's those two. After that, other reforms, we're going to see judiciary improvement. Censorship is going to be relaxed. Judiciary improvement just means serfs don't have to go through the nobles. The nobles aren't their judge, jury, and trial, which is a good thing for serfs. Education will be liberalized. Industrialization is going to come in the form of railroad construction. So number 7, you definitely need to know. Railroads are going to enable Russia to export grain and earn profits for further industrialization. So theirs kind of starts differently than where we saw the first industrial revolution. England already had transportation, so railroads came because of the industrial revolution. Railroads are going to start industrialism in Russia because it's going to connect that huge area and allow them to bring in other goods and tie their economy together. It strengthened Russia's military and gave rise to territorial expansion. We'll talk about the problems that causes in a minute. And stimulated domestic manufacturing. We'll see some suburbs going up around our big cities. That's all I have to say about railroads, I think. So, even though Alexander's our most liberal czar since Catherine the Great, he does have critics. A lot of liberals are like, oh, what you really did, Alex, wasn't that great. You're just trying to keep people happy to keep your own power. You don't really care about your people. You don't really care about what we want. You're doing this for yourself. There's a group called the Intelligentsia, which was a hostile group of intellectuals like university professors, journalists, who would start to write very bad things about Alex, and this just feeds into the to nihilists. So we've seen anarchists who will do anything to get rid of a government. They're in Russia. Then we're going to have this new group called nihilists, and a nihilist is someone who doesn't believe in anything. So if you know who Jared Kushner is, who shot the Arizona congresswoman, Jared Kushner. He was a nihilist. His friends would all say when they asked, like, why, the first thing Americans ask, why did he do this? Why did it happen? And his friends would all say, like, he didn't even believe he would be one of those people that look at the sky and say the sky is only blue because we think the word blue is blue, like words mean nothing. Like, he doesn't believe in anything. So he did this just to show, like, you don't have to have a reason to do something. He had nothing politically against her. He didn't care about her. He did it because nothing mattered. Like, nothing. I don't know if you've seen The Big Lebowski, and they're like, he's a nihilist, dude. Like, Donnie, he's a nihilist. Nihilist. They don't care about anything. So Alexander II, kind of tied to Rasputin in one way. He is going to be able to avoid death. There will be some assassination attempts. There will be 3 of them that he will survive. So kind of, it's by the nationalists, actually, not even, they're kind of anarchists. But they're Poles, they're Polish, and they're like, hey, you Russian people shouldn't be over us, and so they're trying to get rid and, like, make a statement. So the first thing they try is they shoot him with a handgun. He survives this. Second thing, they blow up the train tracks of his train, but they miss his part of the train, so he survives that. And then the third thing that they do is he's booked a restaurant for dinner with his family. And remember, he's a Romanov, so the Romanov family's going to be there. And the bomb goes off 30 minutes after he leaves from dinner, so they miss him by time. And then finally, the way they do this, like, best way possible, is there's the anarchists, the Polish nationalists, who have snow. It's Russia, snow. So they put little grenades in snowballs, and so they pretend there's a snowball fight, and they hit a guy, but it's not Alex. And Alex, being the guy he is, gets out of his carriage to help the man who's just been injured, and then said other snowball thrower then hits him with the grenade snowball while he's helping this other guy. And it takes out his legs, like mangles his lower body, so he doesn't die right away. He's taken to the Winter Palace where he has a couple hours. Oh, wow. And yeah, so he's going to die in the Winter Palace. The Romanov family's all going to be brought in. So if you're like the little kid's little family, and they're going to be like, see what happens if you help your people? This is what happens. And so we're going to, like, if you're a little kid, you're like, oh my God. They pull back the blankets and show his mangled legs. I mean, like, it's crazy. So we're going to see that liberalism really kind of ends with Alex here. Nicholas, his son, is going to be very reactionary. Like, oh no, I know you didn't go for me. Like, and that's going to be our last czar. Yes, father of Anastasia. So we'll get there in just a little bit. So that's Alex. I want to talk about one thing before I get to our last czar. So that's Alexander II. Alexander III's coming up. See, Count Sergei Witt on the next page is going to start further our industrialization. He's going to oversee Russian industrialization in the 1890s. And so this is just another step in industrialization. He aggressively courted Western capital, so he tries to bring in capital from the West. He is going to give us a Russian middle class, so watch out. We are going to have the Russian Revolution coming up, so anytime you get a middle class. The government will build state-owned railroads. This is where you get the Trans-Siberian Railroad. You could still take a trip on this today if you wanted. It goes almost pretty much into Korea, and so this is some of the run-ins we're going to get ready to have with Japan because of being able to expand here. By 1900, Russia will export half of the world's refined petroleum, which is why we try to be friendly with Russia, because they still have a lot of oil. 1900, Russia will be the fourth in steel production behind the U.S., Germany, and Britain. As in Western Europe, industrialization in Russia is going to contribute to the spread of Marxism. So now we have industrialization in Russia. Welcome in some socialist communist thought that are going to enter Russia at this time. So you want to circle number 7 for sure. Okay, at this time though, put a side note, unions and strikes were still illegal in Russia, although we've seen them legalized in France and in Britain. So despite these economic and social reforms, Russia's economic problems were still staggering by 1900. We have 1/3 of our farmland not being used. We're still behind everyone else. Depression, the Russo-Japanese War, which we're getting ready to talk about, which I've kind of previewed, is going to happen and humiliate Russia again. And so, spoiler alert. So we have some problems just building here. Also, we're going to see that some of the serfs here in a minute are going to get to be able to make money off their land, and they're going to get like, whoa, my own profit, my own food, and they're going to become kulaks, and we're going to see communists really want to kill them and successfully kill them when we try to go back to communal living. So we just have all this craziness going on. And even crazier, we get our last czar, Alexander III. He just, remember the blanket flipping and the mangled legs? Like, he has a really bad memory of what happens to you if you try to help your people. And so he's going to be our most reactionary czar of the 19th century. Circle reactionary. Reactionary means anytime you feel like someone isn't agreeing with what you want, you go after them. You don't wait and talk it out. It's like kind of like Metternich and Whack-A-Mole. You're going to try to put the fire out before it happens. He is known for autocracy, which means my rule only, orthodoxy, which means the church was very important to him, and Russification. He was a nationalist. He believes everything should be all Russia. He kind of wants to create like a holy Russia. Remember that Third Rome kind of thing? A holy Russia to protect itself from liberals. He's kind of like the syllabus of errors. The things he lies out is like everything to like stop modernization. Very reactionary. He is going to encourage anti-Semitism. This is where we get pogroms, or the destruction of Jewish communities and the Jewish population. Kind of like Ferdinand and Isabella. I think he attacks the Jewish population because he's like, if we can be against the entity of people, it will unify us. Kind of like the Inquisition did in Spain. It resulted to a lot of immigration to the United States. We know that it was Poles, but not Jewish Poles that killed Alexander, but he just takes the fact that there was a lot of Jewish population in Poland and says the Jews killed. Alexander II, we'll see that there are 200 plus pogroms in this time. There were May laws under Alexander III, which these laws were kind of like the Jewish question. Kind of we're going to see with Hitler coming up. There were 3 stages to this Jewish question. These laws said that we need to force 1/3 of them, and by force make it so bad here that they don't want to stay. Force 1/3 to migrate, 1/3 we need to convert to orthodoxy, and 1/3 we need to starve. And that was their answer to the Jewish question. And so we're going to start to see then with Theodore Herzl, number 3, with Zionism, that the Jewish population, Jewish leaders are going to start to push for a homeland for the Jewish population. It's going to be really significant after World War II. But what do we need? Wherever we go, persecution seems to follow. This isn't something, we can't get rid of this persecution. He's like pretty upfront. There's no way that we can change all of these people's minds. So what we need is a safe place that is our own to go. And that's what they're going to push for. He goes to the Sultan of the Ottoman Empire and says, can we have a piece of Palestine? The Sultan says, I would rather carve from my own flesh than to carve a piece of Palestine for the Jews. And so that's a pretty clear no. And so then he goes to interview several other people. The British are going to step forward and say, hey, we've got this really cool place in Africa called Uganda that you can just have. You can just live there under British protection. And in 1904, he's going to die. But before that, he pretty clearly states, like, this is not what we want. We don't want, that doesn't hold significance to us as a homeland. And his successors after him will deny Britain's, like, we don't want that. And they're going to keep pushing for Palestine. So you need to put here that this is going to be pretty significant. Even it's significant in modern history now. It's significant as we're edging towards World War I, that they're going to continue pushing for a piece of Palestine. So Nicholas II, we are last Tsar, 1894 to 1917. And this is where we're going to see the Russo-Japanese War. So like I told you, that Trans-Siberian Railroad has been edging all the way across Russia. We're going to come in contact with the Japanese in Manchuria and Korea. And the Russians, as white Europeans, even though we consider them part of Asia, are going to say there's no way an Asian could beat us. They just waged this war without really thinking about it. and they are soundly defeated by the Japanese. This is a huge humiliation to them because other European nations start to look at Russia and like, oh, you were beat by the Japanese. And so, I mean, there's just a lot of racism at this time, especially in history, and we're going to see that with imperialism next unit.
Okay, so Downton Abbey.
Oh,
Yes,
yes, yes.
okay, so yeah, okay. First of all, Prince Kuragan, right? He's
Igor.
Prince.
Uh-huh.
Okay, he is about to marry the Dowager Countess. Okay,
Well,
he had to flee Russia because of the Jewish thing, and then another group of people, the other family, is about to marry Rose.
Yes, Lord
and
Senator-
Alexander be
yeah.
against all of them. That's right, and they're Jews, and so they were forced
They're
to leave
Jews.
Russia.
Ah, great,
Yeah, he
Great.
likes Jews a lot. Yeah.
great connection to this time period. So, I love the connection. There we go. So see, this part will stick with you forever.
Yes.
Because you've made a schema, you've connected neurons.
Yeah.
So this humiliating defeat of Russia, you need to underline here, turns their attention away from Asia, and they're going to start focusing on the Balkans again, which is going to become a problem for us because the Balkans, it always starts in the Balkans. OVB said it best. It'll be some damn crazy thing in the Balkans that starts the next war. It always is. Putin, just stay away from the Balkans. Ah. I mean, what's important about warm water anyway?
When his foreign policy, he'll be fine.
Yeah, it'll be okay. All right.
Blair, let's go take over Crimea.
Yeah.
Dude, that's not a good idea.
No. Oh man, I just feel like I'm gonna have to like completely change my Putin lecture like every year from here on out. We'll just see. Revolution of 1905. So what happens when you're usually humiliated on the world front is people start to show their unhappiness at home even more. So this is just a taste of what's coming with the Russian Revolution. This is not the Russian Revolution. This is the Revolution of 1905. It just happens in Russia. Poor economy and strains of the war are going to lead the peasants on the mirrors and this new working class to join together and rise up. Now, it's peaceful. I want you to write peaceful right here, like in capitals, like so peaceful that when these working class and these peasants march together, they are singing hymnals. Singing hymnals, marching together, right here by the Revolution of 1905. This is no storming of the Bastille. This is no heads on pikes. They are singing hymnals like Kumbaya, my lord, and marching towards the capital with a list to show the Tsar of things he could consider that would make them happy. They do not know the Tsar is not home. He has been gone traveling for 2 weeks. They get there. It's a huge group of them. But singing hymnals, not armed at all. Just going with a list. Armed with words. So they show up. The military, the army that is there at the palace, just opens fire on them. And it's called Bloody Sunday because it was like a cold-blooded massacre. 1,000 people are dead at the end of this. And a general strike will take place against the Tsar after this. So the Tsar not being there, really not responsible for any of this. Even though reactionary, I don't think he would have ever ordered the firing on these individuals. Will have to make some concessions. He's forced to, or he is going to have a huge uprising. And so we will see that we will get our Duma at this time period. So circle D, that's our National Assembly. So he does not like liberalism, but his hands are tied here. This was a huge deal, a huge massacre, on unarmed, religious, Orthodox people. So he has to make some concessions. He granted freedom of speech, assembly of press. The Tsar, though, will retain absolute veto. Revolutionaries were divided, resulting in Duma having no real influence. So he does put some things there to make sure that this legislature won't, become too powerful. But we are going to see and make a note here that socialists and communists really start to, even though Alexander's making some liberal reforms, they're like, you're only doing this to save your own neck. And they start to really distrust him and think that he only does things to keep his head on his shoulders. And so the communists and socialists are not going to be so happy about this. Russia starts to experience, however, some mild economic recovery between 1907 and 1914. Peter Stolypin is going to push through important agrarian reforms to break down collective village ownership. This is where we get the kulaks. And, oh my gosh, I get to keep my own money? This is going to become a problem when communism takes over because they are going to massacre these people. So that's coming up. After 1911, the Tsar's court becomes increasingly dominated by a mystic monk named Rasputin, resulting in widespread doubts about the Tsar's ability to lead. So we're going to discuss all of this later, but just setting the stage, this guy is weird. He's weird, but he fascinates me I can't even describe the morbid fascination with Rasputin. He's a monk. He's a mystic and a mystic monk, but he runs around, so he's a monk, Orthodox monk at that. So he's like in a monk robe. He runs around bragging about his endowment, his genitalia, and he wears the monk thing, and so he is known on like almost every occasion a woman was present, just like, ka-cha! And like flash, he was like flash people. He's just crazy. But he's said to be a mystic, and what's important is, yeah,
All the men are in there, and then all of a sudden, a woman
yeah,
is like, no, and then
yeah. He's scared. I mean, he's just creepy looking. Anyway, Alexandra, the wife of Nicholas, is a German, and so she's from this whole line, that we're going to talk about coming up to World War I. But her son, Alexia, has hemophilia, which means you could bleed. You bleed to death. If you get bruised, you're still bleeding under your skin. And so Rasputin has supposedly been able to help her son when no one else can. Like even over the phone says an enchantment, and then her son, who has cut himself or like nothing would make him stop bleeding, can heal him. And so she starts to really, really, really trust him. And what's going to happen is Nicholas is going to have to go off to World War I. He actually goes to the front, to the Russian front, and he leaves her and Rasputin together. Rasputin takes advantage of this, and she really trusts him, and he is going to start to make some disastrous decisions for Russia, and ones that are going to get the whole Romanov family killed, which is why he will be. So that's just setting the stage for where we're going with Russia, just some craziness coming up. But we have to leave off there because I brought you up to the world everywhere, in Europe and Asia, to 1914, the eve of World War I. Yay.
End of Down Abbey season 1.